Thanking the gentleman from New Jersey. I'd start again from the beginning, Mr. Speaker, and that is that this is the 40th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. I never imagined that we would be here 40 years afterwards, 55 million abortions afterwards, still seeking respect for innocent unborn human life and the right of personhood that many over on the other side of the aisle also claim one should have once they're born. But they give no right, no dignity to babies that are preborn. And I'd like to provide some of the narrative here of a story written by Joyce Zunis. And Joyce's narrative is about her life. Each one of these are just heart-wrenching. And this is among those heart-wrenching stories, of which there are by now millions around the country. Joyce's story starts out with this, in bold: "We will not speak of this again." It's her mother telling her, as a 15-year-old girl on the way to the abortion clinic, that there'd be no discussion of it outside of what happened that day. That's at age 15. And it says that the room was filled with many girls, one of which she knew, weren't able to keep it as a secret. They said it wouldn't hurt, but it did. They said it would be over real quick, but it lasted 35 years. And 11 years later, here's the narrative, Mr. Speaker. 11 years, 3 clinics, 2 states, 7 abortions. Not once was I told of the traumatic suffering that would follow, which it did. And on the 7th abortion, Joyce Zunis writes, "Several hours later, the vacuum-like noise broke a decade-old trance. What have I done?" And as her story continues, she writes about emotional trauma. "The child lost through choice would devour my dignity." They didn't tell her that. She said, "I justified my twisted truth." That goes on every day here in America, 4,000 times a day in America. And she said, "Everyone talks about their right to choose, but no one talks about the result, about the choice, the result of the choice." She writes, "I will never forget hearing my firstborn's heartbeat." A thing of joy for most people. But instead of joy, she wrote, "I was in shock. I was terrified the nurses would see right through me and what I had done to my other children. I was never told you would need to grieve and cry for your unborn, that your life would be forever altered by the horrors of your chosen loss." This narrative I will introduce into the record and put this in this perspective. 40 years of Roe versus Wade. How did we get here, Mr. Speaker? And it's important for us to understand how the creeping decisions of a Supreme Court creep in on the innocent unborn lives of 55 million babies who were victims of abortion, millions of mothers and of fathers who have suffered the trauma and the heartbreak of finding out afterwards that they carried the responsibility and the burden on their conscience that altered them for a lifetime. It changed their relationships with their other children, with their family members, and it changed their relationships with brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers that they interrelate with in their daily lives. But in 1965, we had a Supreme Court decision called Griswold versus Connecticut, and that was the camel's nose under the tent. At that time, Connecticut had passed a state legislation that prohibited the sale of contraceptives. It was supported by the Catholic Church, of which I am a member. It was litigated to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court found a right to privacy manufactured out of thin air, that right to privacy that granted then that prohibited banning the sale of contraceptives to married couples. But that word, the right to privacy phrase, became the foundation for, from 1965 on until 1973, Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton. And those two cases came together, essentially said that you have a right to an abortion at any time for any reason, abortion on demand. That was the conclusion of the two cases, Doe versus Bolton in 73. And we went on. We've got some opportunities to try to make some changes here in Congress. And the beginning of it was the ban on partial birth abortion, which was litigated to the Supreme Court, turned down. I arrived here in the Judiciary Committee, and we rewrote that language under the leadership of Steve Shabbat of Ohio, and so that it would comply with the decision of the court. It was litigated across the countryside, and I went into the courtroom of Judge Kopp in Lincoln, Nebraska, as he had concluded that the findings of Congress were inferior to the preparation work of the attorneys in that court. Someone had to speak up. I did so in Lincoln that day and let him know that our congressional findings were deeply deliberated and well-founded. I did so through the press, and I found out that he reads the papers. But what happened finally was we were able to have a case sustained to the Supreme Court that at least banned the gruesome process of partial birth abortion. And in the process of these debates that we've had, Mr. Speaker, it has been useful. We've marched here. This will be the 40th year that hundreds of thousands, by now millions of people, and especially young people, have come to Washington, D.C., gone out to the Basilica for the pro-life vigil mass, where I've seen as many as 15,000 people out at the Basilica, all praying together, all singing together, all joining together in an effort to protect and defend innocent unborn human life, and then come the next day here to the mall in Washington and march together from the mall all the way around to the Supreme Court, and then disperse across the Capitol ground to the various receptions and offices so that they can bring their influence. This has changed the conscience of America. This has informed millions of now mothers that might have given up their baby to abortion instead. I'm encouraged by the path that we've taken. I have to believe that millions of voices raising together in hymns and prayer, marching, that over the years, it has had its effect. It's having its effect. There will be a day when we see the end of Roe versus Wade. There will be a day when we respect and revere every human life from that instant or moment of conception until natural death. That's what I work for. That's what I pray for. That's what many members of the pro-life caucus here in Congress have, and many people across the countryside. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to live in a country that has so many millions of people that have great respect for innocent unborn human life, and I will be forever grateful if I live to see the day that Roe versus Wade finally is set aside and life is protected in law. I thank the gentleman from New Jersey, and I yield back.
Thank you.